Welcome everyone to another broadcast of the Judge Hubert Radio Hour on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. And now your host, judge and author, the Honorable Judge Hubert.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to all of our listeners out there in Radio Land. We are so grateful to be with you again. Here we are in the second month of the new year. And for those that might not have gotten a chance to say this to last month, let's say Happy New Year and hope that this year is far better than the last. It is certainly always a pleasure to come and to share with each of you from our broadcast studios. I'm actually here in Florida, but Scott, of course, is up in Ohio, and we know there's a slight difference in the weather, although right now it doesn't feel like there's much difference because it's kind of chilly in Florida. But nevertheless, we're here and we're excited tonight with the guest that's going to come and be with us. As those of our regular listeners know, we try to talk, we focus on three areas in our conversations with our guests. One, we always like to talk about education. Well, that's so important because education is the key to being and staying free. We like to also talk about the law. Well, that's my background. And so, of course, we like to engage in terms of things that affect our listeners in the field of law and, of course, in social justice. How do we help move the needle forward? How do we help make this country and this world a better place, not only for ourselves, but for the generations that come after us? And so we here are so grateful to be connected with Artists First and to be able to share some ideas with those in our listening audience. You know, February is designated as Black History Month, and it was all started by Dr. Carter G. Woodson back in 1923 when he formed the Association for the Study of African American History and African American Life and History. And the purpose behind that was to recognize the accomplishments of Black Americans who had largely been considered enslaved or descendants of the enslaved, and oftentimes their contributions were overlooked. And of course, Dr. Woodson and many others came together and decided that if they could create a week where they could recognize the contributions and accomplishments of Black Americans, that this would indeed help raise the standard of the race. And so they started with Negro History Week back in the 1920s, and now, of course, in the mid-70s, it expanded to Black History Month. And so here we are, and we try every day to do something in particular during this time of the year to be able to try to help encourage the generations behind us of the importance of them doing those positive things that are going to make a difference in their lives, and in the lives of those to come. And so carrying that out, we're coming up on the actual week that was originally designated as Negro History Week because it was tied into the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, and he felt like these were two very pivotal gentlemen during the course of Black history. And so it is now, of course, as I stated earlier, been expanded. And of course, I go back to the theme of our show, which is, of course, the quote that I give you every month from my dear friend who's now deceased and has transitioned. But it says, never go to bed as ignorant as you were when you got up this morning. Every day, you ought to learn something new. And I know tonight we're going to learn some new things. Last month, I actually launched a series on talking about healthcare, and I was blessed to have my daughter as my guest. That was Miss Evan Grimes, who was a 20-plus year administrator in the field of healthcare. And tonight, in keeping with that, we're going to dive a little deeper in that we've got an awesome young woman who is doing wonderful things, not only in terms of what she is doing herself, but in the young people that she's teaching and teaching them how to help become even stronger and better. Integrating technology, social media, and community engagement to decrease health disparities. Now, that sounds like a relatively long title, but I guarantee you that once you hear the presentation and the conversation with Dr. Wilson-Howard tonight, you're going to be not only filled, but you're going to be encouraged, inspired. And that's what this is all about. How can we help inspire others to be the best version of themselves? So I want to welcome to the Judge Hubert Radio Hour none other than Dr. Danielle Wilson-Howard, a faculty member at Bethune-Cookman University in the Department of Natural Sciences. She's also an affiliated faculty member with the University of Florida's STEM Translational Communication Center. She has been engaged in various forms of research, particularly in the overall area of healthcare, and trying to help improve minority healthcare in the diaspora. And so we're going to talk a lot about various things, various projects that she's been doing. And of course, I guarantee you that when you leave here tonight, that you're going to be inspired all the more. So welcome to the Judge Hubert Radio Hour, none other than Dr. Danielle Wilson-Howard. How are you doing out there, Dr. Wilson-Howard?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. That was a nice introduction.
Well,
thank you. How are you?
Well deserved. I am doing well. Still fighting the good fight of faith over here. So we're grateful.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Well, we kind of got this conversation started a few months ago as we were talking about some of the work that you were doing in this whole healthcare field. But you also were taking it a step further to not just do research, but you also have tied in a lot of other areas such as social media, such as community engagement, and all of that with the technology that is rapidly advancing in our society today. And it's so amazing to hear. But before I put the cart before the horse, let's back up for a moment and tell our listeners a little bit about your background and where you started from and how you ended up here with us and and the things that you're doing currently.
No problem. Once again, thank you for having me here. I'm super excited about this conversation tonight. All right, to talk a little bit about my history, I was a first-generation college student. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia, and like I said earlier, we call it Norfolk, Virginia. So I'm from Norfolk, Virginia, and I was the first to go to school. One of the key things that helped me along the way, my parents always put me in different programs. So I was in Upward Bound. I was in AVID, and some of these programs are still around today, making changes in people's life. I'm a firm believer that these programs work, so definitely need to continue to fund them. I learned about college from the Upward Bound program. We went on college tours, and one college in particular that we visited was Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. So as everyone knows, or if you don't know, Lincoln University is the first historically black college and university established in 1854. And one of the reasons I really loved Lincoln University when we took that tour was just the rich history of the university. And they had a deep emphasis on STEM and ensuring that students who were interested in majoring in science and technology were able to do those things. And so they had a program called LASER, which was Lincoln's Advanced Science, Engineering, and Reinforcement Program. And that program took students from high school. You had to apply for it. You had to do a series of interviews. And you started college early. You had to take 18 credits during the summer. And if you got above a 3.0, then they provided a full ride, tuition waiver, fees waived, housing, room and board, all of those things, and a stipend. Right. And I applied for the program, and I got in, and it was 25 of us, and 5 of us got above a 3.0 that summer. And it was just an awesome opportunity because, once again, it kind of opened my eyes to, understanding science even more. I majored in chemistry because at that time, chemistry made sense. Later, once I got to graduate school, realized everything was built on theory, and this is why we have generation 1, 2, and 3. Whenever you look at your gadgets or your devices, this is why they always come out with something else, because everything is based on theory, and the theories get better as the technology improves. So majored in chemistry, joined other programs. Once again, I always talk about the programs that helped me along the way. Minority Access to Research Careers, that's another one, a MARC program. It's funded through the National Institute of Health. LS AMP, Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, that's funded by the National Science Foundation. These are all programs that ensure that African Americans and other minority groups have a seat at the table when it came to the field of science. And so I took advantage of them. And then once I got my degree, I went to the University of Florida to obtain my PhD in chemistry. I mentored in these same programs and began to give back. And it was at the University of Florida when I was working on my PhD in chemistry that I realized working in a lab is fun, but my personality lends itself to the community. And how can I make this change now that I am fully invested in a PhD program to go to the community? And so I began to do mentoring with new graduate students that entered UF, once again do another program. And I ended up getting a postdoc at Moffitt Cancer Center where I had the opportunity to mentor undergraduates at the University of South Florida and then learn about the field of public health. And that was amazing. It was an eye-opener where we were able to further the science in proteomics, which is the study of proteins and how these proteins relate to different discoveries in cancer research, but then also go into the community and help people understand the science of cancer and define cancer and not only just pray it away, but make informed decisions about their treatment options and preventative screening methods and all of those things. So that was the eye-opener into what I called from the bench top to the sidewalk, understanding science and how to communicate it in, informal environments. So in the community, and, science museums, at science cafes, all of those different things. And I saw that, and the research shows that African Americans, of course, have worse outcomes, health outcomes than other populations. So one of those key things is understanding the science of these different diseases. Do we have these conversations? Do the doctors talk to us in a manner where we get it? And that has been my passion since, that postdoc at Moffitt Cancer Center. So I've built my research and my service and all of those different things, my career surrounding decreasing health disparities by communicating the science of different diseases. And so now at Bethune-Cookman, we have an initiative called Win HP, We Invest in Your Needs Health Project, where we're now, myself along with Dr. Sherma Butts, we're training students on developing different health initiatives, connecting people with resources, and explaining the science of these different diseases.
Wow. As you said that about the cancer piece, I just brought to mind one of my favorite radio hosts is a gentleman by the name of Joe Madison, who is usually on every morning on Sirius XM, and he has been there for a number of years, was one of probably the founders of Urban View. And Joe passed last week from prostate cancer after having battled it for about 15 years. And so since that time, they have been doing additional shows to bring in and to encourage. And he was one that did encourage people. He was never silent about the disease that he was battling. And in fact, he felt like it was important that he share that information to try to help others to make sure they got their tests, and whether it was PSA tests or any of the other more modern tests that are available. And I know you said that you spent time at Moffitt, and Moffitt is rapidly becoming one of the premier cancer treatment centers in the world. And I'm so happy to hear that the work that you're doing is all about, and you've always been about educating not just those in the classroom, but people in the community on these kinds of things and what they should be doing in order to take better care of themselves. So congratulations on all the work you've done, and I'm just excited that you could take time out of your busy schedule just to be with us tonight.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. It's important. We have to get the word out. Our people are dying unnecessarily.
Wow. Even now that I think about it, I remember the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was being treated for prostate cancer, and a lot of the media got upset because they say he didn't tell anybody he was going into the hospital for treatment, and he didn't even tell the president he was going in, and So they were, well, who was going to take charge if there was a problem? Well, there wasn't a problem, that we know that it wasn't, and I guess the people that were closest to him would have certainly been able to carry out. But he came out in a statement, I believe yesterday or the day before, where he basically was encouraging Black Americans and the like to make sure they got checked, and because he too was also dealing with the issue of prostate cancer. So all of this is just one example of, the kind of things that we are certainly dealing with, and I'm glad to see that individuals and professionals like yourself are certainly sharing a spotlight upon these things so that we can be better and can live the full life that we all desire to do so.
Yes, definitely. It's important to get screening.
Yes, and in fact, some of the screenings that you've done, some of the programs that you've been involved with in the local community, talk a little bit about those in terms of what's the theme, what's the how are you going about doing some of those things, and let's just share some information on how we might be able to encourage others to do that.
Okay, sure, no problem. So, like I said, my background when I first was introduced to this, to public health, was in science communication, was looking at cancer. And so I've done outreach for prostate cancer. And so, yes, please get screening. I've also done outreach and education for colorectal cancer. And what I found that was very interesting is when we were doing the outreach and the education for colorectal cancer, this is when I teamed up with Dr. Janice Krieger and Dr. Ben Lott. Ben Lott is from University of Florida. Janice Krieger was previously at University of Florida. She's now at Mayo Clinic. And the goal of that research was to see if virtual human technology would be influential in providing information about the FIT kit. So doing a fecal exam at home to detect colorectal cancer. So that is something that is very popular. Is that that little box that's oftentimes on TV, and it talks about
yes,
Cologuard.
Yes, yes.
That is an example of
box, but
yes, that is an at-home method of the testing for you doing a fecal sample, a stool sample, to detect blood in your stool samples so that you can go on and get a colonoscopy, because we know that colonoscopy, it takes prep. People may have to take off time from work. It's like 3 days to drink a fluid, and then you have to go in for your exam, and not everyone can do that, So to be able to take an at-home test, take it to your doctor, send it through the mail, drop it off at the lab, and then they can let you know if your sample is fine and if you need to come in and get a colorectal test. That's very important, because now you're saving time, money. In addition, what we found very, very interesting when looking at the virtual human, we did focus groups with men, women, mixed, African-American, white, Hispanic. We developed virtual human characters that were black, white, male, female. They were all named Alex. And it was pretty cool because we consulted with focus groups when developing these characters to see what they like, if they would trust it. And we found over time there were certain characteristics about the virtual human that people found trustworthy. And at some point, the men, everyone, by the time we got to the last iteration of the virtual human, some people was like, I feel more comfortable talking to the virtual human than I would my original doctor. So that was very interesting, and it goes to show where we're going with technology, and the more people are exposed, the more they trust it. But one of the key things that came out of some of the focus group with African-American men was the testing method for colorectal cancer and the testing method for prostate cancer. They were kind of confusing the two. So we thought like it was turning men away from getting the colorectal cancer screening, the colonoscopy, because they were thinking that they were going to get the finger test, which they call, for prostate cancer. And so we had to continuously tell them, like, no, that's not right. And so we thought, like, well, maybe we need to do an intervention and explain to men that these are separate tests and all of that. Well, when we dug a little bit further into research, before 2004, before 2004, they were doing that. They were using a test. So if a man had went to the doctor, or he had an uncle that, went to get his screening, and he came back and told him, then it could have been the finger test. So it's not necessarily that they were confused. The de-implementation of the screening method wasn't communicated to the public. It was only told to the insurance companies and the doctors. So that was just very, very interesting. And so once again, it's just, there's small parts within healthcare systems that if we don't think about them, we will fail a group of people. And I think it was actually a 1994 study. It was a VA study where they saw that there were false positives associated with the one test that they used. So that was definitely interesting research. Another project that we did was when COVID-19 occurred. As you know, the world went crazy. Everything shut down. And unlike, the American Cancer Society, there was no American COVID Society to turn to for guidelines and help. And so everyone, they turn to social media, they turn to the news. And if you think about the younger generation who do not watch cable and they get all of their information from social media, which has algorithms that will only show you your interest based on conversations that you have and likes, we saw a large group of people who were hesitant towards getting vaccinations because of things, misinformation that they were seeing and hearing on social media. So we developed the Pandemic Win Initiative, and our goal was to be that beacon of hope within a community, and also virtually to show that, here's where you can go for the right information, trusted sources of information. We put out information as a trusted source. And we took it one step further because the spotlight on Florida during that time, it was not the best. And one of the key things we did was we used Google Maps to do reviews on different businesses to show that Florida was, we had outdoor seating, we had sanitized stations, that some restaurants had QR codes, because if you think about it, people who were working in the restaurant industry or in grocery stores or at stores that had to remain open, they now became an at-risk population because they were at risk of catching COVID more than anybody who could stay home. So it wasn't just the doctors and the nurses. You had regular people who were getting sick because they had to work, and then they would go home, take it to their family, or they would be the ones ending up in the hospital. So we also work with businesses to show them different ways that they could, protect themselves from COVID and decrease the risky behaviors. And our reviews and our images that we posted on Google Reviews, to this day, I think we have 33 million views and likes and all of those things. So that was very, very simple.
Million?
33 million. You go to Pandemic Win Initiative on Google Reviews, and it was very, very helpful. We had managers responding, people letting us know, thank you. With the students, we developed a kind of like a assessment guide before we would go into different stores and restaurants, and we would check it off. And then we would just leave a blurb about, this place has outdoor seating. That was very important to people because, in Florida, our industry is based on tourism. So we had to show people that, it's safe to come here. We are taking precautions and all of those things. And then we have another initiative that we partner with Easter Seal Autism Center of Excellence. One of the students, two of the students is called AARs, and the goal is to increase awareness of autism and create a safer space so that people are aware of the symptoms and the signs, especially in different industries where, restaurants and stuff like that, once again, where people may interact with a parent that has a child who's autistic. How can we increase the understanding of it? And then we also did it with the students on campus. We worked with Autism Center of Excellence to have a haunted house that was sensory friendly for an hour, which was extremely fun and difficult to create. But we were able to do it. The students are amazing and very, very creative. We had superheroes that walked families through, and we engaged the kids from the community in activities in different rooms where they would defeat a villain. So just really interesting things like that.
You have been busy.
Oh my God, yes.
Going back to a couple things you talked about, we talked about the importance of screening. And I would say to my listeners out there that as a black male who is, I was blessed to cross over into because I call it the 70s club during the Christmas holidays. But I've taken
Happy belated birthday.
Well, thank you. Taking done colorectal screenings, with colonostomy just a few months ago, and also, of course, my doctor monitors the prostate. I try to see him about every 3 to 6 months, and so all of those things are really helpful. And I want to encourage those of you that are out there. There are various different resources that are also available. So even if you don't have specifically a primary care physician, if you look, if you'll keep searching, there are opportunities out there that for people that can help you, even through the public health department. I mean, that may be a good place if you need to start to find resources that are available to you that are already largely, and for those of you that may not have even signed up for the Affordable Health Care Act, there are still opportunities that exist there that can help you to really take better care of yourself and not just throw yourself away like so often happens when we don't. So, and think that you had 33. Go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, can I add to that? So if you are concerned about any health issue, each month we celebrate a different disease. And whenever that month comes up, keep in mind, like Judge just said, the Department of Health in your area, they have a calendar of these different months and different diseases. If you are concerned about diabetes, blood pressure, any one of the cancers, just look for the awareness month. Around that time in your community, whoever the servicing agents are, they will have events with information, with access to services, with resources. So we all know, breast cancer month is October? Well, the month right before it is prostate cancer awareness month. So just, if you are concerned about any health issue, just Google the awareness month and believe that, you'll be able to find the different resources within your community that can get you access to care. Just
right.
Put that out.
And if you don't get anything else out of this conversation tonight, that alone will help to save some lives. And share that with your friends, your family. Like you say, people share so much on social media, which is oftentimes silly and foolish. But how many of us are sharing information like that can in turn save a life? And the life you save might even be your own. So that's so important. I hope that you all take that into consideration and you'll govern yourselves accordingly. You were also talking about this sort of brings up another piece where you were talking about while we're developing so many good things in the area of technology, and we look at even so many data that says that life expectancy continues. I guess we, on the one hand, continues to expand, but I understand during the pandemic, certain groups, of course, they say sort of plateaued. But at the same time, we know that technology is going forward. But you had a very interesting piece, and I want to kind of talk about the interplay between technology and social media, because when you said 33 million hits on that review that people took, that in itself spreads good news and good news about our health. So talk a little deeper about that in terms of how they interplay, particularly with our younger generation, in terms of how they are either taking care of themselves and how they are, like you said, basing their information flow upon things that in the past my generation certainly did not have access to.
Yes, no problem. Definitely, I think it's one of the most exciting yet scariest things of technology, and including social media. I was actually joking with my students earlier, and I was telling them, back in our day, we had to worry about being catfish, where someone said they wasn't who they were. Well, nowadays and in the future, they're going to have to worry about, is the person that they met, that they're talking to via social media, where they slid in their DMs, is it an actual person or is it, AI? they may be engaging with AI.
Elaborate on that for me, please.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So our phones, these wonderful devices that we're on, they are constantly collecting data. In addition, systems like ChatGPT and other AI sources, they are able to scavenge the internet and bring pieces of information together so quickly that it seems as though you're talking with another person, or that you're typing or you're interacting with another person. But it's actually, artificial intelligence. And so when you think about our social media, the goal is to keep our attention. There's a TV show that I love, and it's the most complicated TV show ever, and it's based on a book, and I'm hoping they come out with another season. But it's called American Gods. Have you heard of it?
I'm not a big TV watcher, although I do. But talk about it.
I know it's a book. So
Okay.
American Gods it's just, I love it. I keep saying I'm going to listen to the audio books, but I don't even know if I'll get it, because sometimes when I watch the show, I would then have to watch the recap on YouTube. And it was just an amazing show, because it looked at, how the United States of America is like a melting pot, and people from different cultures, when they first arrived in the United States, they brought their gods with them, their religion with them, their spirituality with them. And then as they integrated into the United States, as things evolved beyond the industrial, revolution and all of those things into where we are now, people have left their gods. And they say, whoever you give your attention and your time to, that's your God. So instead of praying for hours, people are spending hours on social media or on TV. And so American Gods is a war between the newer gods, who are gods of technology, versus the older gods. So the gods that came from all of the different cultures. So it's an amazing show, but it's literally like whoever you give your time to. Like they say, the new currency is time and attention, because we spend so much time and attention on our devices. And when we do that, we might have agreed to a silly app to have fun, but it's collecting our data. And the data includes the way we talk, what we say, what we're interested in, what we like, what we smile at, all of those different things, because the phone has the ability to capture that information. And so when you're on social media and you decide that you like this thing or you don't like this, it's going to show you more of whatever you're interested in. So my news feed and your news feed are going to be completely different. So if we only depend on social media for our news, for our information, it's going to be biased. You're going to miss certain things, and you're not going to learn as much. And so when we were looking at, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Please continue.
Okay, so when we were looking at COVID, it was interesting because when our students came back for the internship, most of them were hesitant towards getting the vaccination. And they would show me clips of, a young lady with green hair and a hoodie on, pointing to news articles, trying to explain why it wasn't, safe to get the vaccination, things that didn't make any sense at all. So as we begin to go through our training, learn more about COVID, learn more about the vaccination process, we're having conversations, they're looking up information about it on their devices, their social media changed. It changed completely from things against it to things that were supporting it. They begin to see different information. It's very adaptable. So it just adapted to what their interests were based on what they were already doing. So, like if you're signed into Google on your computer and you also have it on your phone, well, they're connected. So that information is just exchanging between itself. So if they're looking up research on, COVID-19 and ways to stop the spread, and we're taking pictures and we're saying this is a safe place and all of that, social media is picking up on all of those words and all of those things. And so to keep your attention, because they feel that's your attention, it's going to show you those things. It's really, really interesting.
Now, is the ultimate goal in those discussions or dialogues or what social media is doing, collecting that data, is it all about marketing? Is it all about what people actually will in turn spend their money on because they've shown what their interests are?
Part of it is marketing, what they will spend their money on. the other part of it is time. Like companies can get investors if they can keep someone's time and interest on whatever it is they're doing. So like, think about how many people use GPS, and none of us have ever paid for a GPS system, but yet we still use it. And you have different companies that Wave versus Google Maps versus, whatever platform Apple used. But these are billion-dollar companies, but we never pay for them. But we spend our time with them. We use them. So some of it is marketing for purchasing items. Other things may just be, I can hold this person's attention long enough. So if you do want to sell something, I can capture that audience that may be interested in it. Or if you do have a particular agenda, I can capture that audience that is in tune with it.
So how does that look, in your opinion, regarding, say, this year being a hot-button political year?
Oh, Lord, I am so scared. That is a loaded question, and I am, it's going to be interesting and like no other year. I can say that much. I think it's going to be interesting in a sense because there's going to be, how do I explain it? Because I'm thinking of a couple different thoughts. One, I'm thinking about propaganda and, how social media can be used to spread the word, how it can be used to spread good words versus bad words, misinformation. And then also I'm thinking about, the deep fakes, how people may think that it's one person saying something, but it's actually not that person saying it. And will you be able to determine if it's that person saying it or not? And then once again, with just AI in general, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting year, interesting election year.
Well, as we were talking earlier, you were telling me about the idea that how with the collection of all this knowledge and data, how AI can actually, in turn, generate a persona, I would use that term, to say that make you think it's one person, or even think that it's a reflection of yourself. And I actually saw something the other day that was sort of startling to me, but they actually had developed robots which were actually engaged in track competition. It was a 100-yard dash, and they ran
against Boston Dynamics.
It was just amazing that this robot could actually keep up. And ultimately, I believe the guy outran the robot, but it wasn't. The robot was right close by, and I said, "Well, with some other tweaks, this thing could be really amazing." The second thing I saw was a robot was playing basketball, and the guy faked him out, and he, of course, hasn't. I guess next time around, he probably will have learned from that, so he can adjust to that. But to see a robot stand there and play basketball or to run against human competition, it just brought to mind and say, we are much further along in this whole AI thing than what we may even be conscious, than the vast majority of us are consciously aware of.
Definitely. I always, and robotics and AI are both very, very interesting. The moment that they're able to marry AI and robotics with a robot that is fully, I guess I want to say functional or capable of moving and also thinking and speaking the way that stationary AI can. So we have robots that, especially throughout COVID, they were able to develop a lot of robots that could, help in the healthcare industry. When COVID first happened, we weren't for sure how it was spreading, and so they had robots that would serve as nurses that could do a number of different things as far as like doing different testings, but they would still roll around. They might have had some upper body really slow, staggered arm movement. but really in detailed facial empathy and, movements like that, and could think and not think, but, could be programmed to talk and engage like a human would. And then you have those robots that are, very active, can determine what's around them and move and jump, but they're not necessarily communicating or talking. The moment that I think we're able to get both of them on, some iRobot type stuff, we're in trouble. But we are headed in that direction. we are definitely headed in that direction. And I think we're closer than we think. So.
Wow. So you think we'll be, you mentioned iRobot, which of course, for those listeners out there, that was a movie. I believe Will Smith was the main character in that, but the robots could be created and replicated. I mean, there were, hundreds of them performing many tasks, from child care to, just you name it. And I was thinking about this, that even this afternoon as I was preparing and thinking about the fact that going back in my own years on the planet, I think back to as a kid, the big thing was the Jetsons as a cartoon. And they had Rosie the robot. They had some, they had the flying car. They had different things, but they were so far-fetched that we knew that they were cartoons. But then we go into maybe in my later teen years, Lost in Space, where they actually had robots and they had, force fields that were able to resist and they could, fly to other planets. And then, of course, Star Trek and Star Wars. And now we're seeing some of these things are starting to come into the marketplace. Who would have thought 10, 15 years ago that even Tesla would be as far along as it is? And now Tesla has spawned electric cars for all the other major companies now. And it's just one bit. And then, of course, we know that here in Florida, we are not far from Cape Canaveral and Cape Kennedy, where there's constantly shooting off rockets, and now they're landing those rockets back. The booster rockets are being landed back, so they don't have to build a new one each time, and they're reusable. And it just it's kind of amazing that we are seeing all of these things happen, and they're happening quickly. And what do you? I know you had talked earlier about how you felt like if they ever combine all of these two things together, we may find ourselves in like an iRobot society. Yeah. Is that your thoughts?
It is, because if you think about all the knowledge that is out there, right? We always say you could be whatever you want to be. We tell our kids that whatever you think of, you can create. This is it. The sky is the limit to what we can create and what we can think. And it's interesting because I would say if it's like fueled by the competition with being the first and being better and being able to improve, like we already know that a faulty device could be sold into the general public and people will buy it and they will purchase it. And even though it's working well and is doing what we need it to do, if a newer version come out like that with just maybe 1 or 2, 3 things that are better, we're going to put the money in it and go get that newer device. So it's like this never being satisfied with what we have. There's always a way to improve it and make it better. And then all the knowledge that's out there, that's all of the theories. It's like we get the information from God, but we type it out. We put it in the stratosphere. Everything that a robot, all the intelligence, it's not making it up.
No.
It's pulling it from sources that as individuals, as people, we have created. But it's just easier and quicker because this person in Denmark may have this one piece of the puzzle. Someone else, in New York may have the other piece to it. And we may be sitting there forever trying to read articles and, put things together and piece those theories and do the experiments. but you have a supercomputer that can scan the internet in seconds and grab that information and put that theory together quicker than a human could. Why? Because we programmed it to do it. So it's going to take that artificial intelligence, all of the good things and all of the bad things, because the bad things are out there too. It might not have been a good person that put it out there, but, bad people exist and they share information as well. So there's even a thing where, I was reading earlier, and I know it's probably like old information now because ChatGPT has advanced, but they had like a alter ego named Dan for ChatGPT, where ChatGPT would give you the regular information, the, very, very politically correct information, but then Dan would give it to you in like a different form. It was just really interesting. So it's just, I do think at some point, the artificial intelligence may pull together the theories in a way where we trust it too much, but it doesn't have the empathy. I can't say the word right now because I'm thinking of chemistry terms. What's the word? Is that the word? Say it again.
The human empathy.
Yeah.
Caring about other people.
Right.
Wow.
So that in theory, if this might be the right thing to do, I'm not going to do it. Or the wrong thing to do. This may be ideally, if this person does this, then we should respond this way. But we give that person grace just like God gives it to us. Will artificial intelligence be programmed to give that same level of grace, or will it stick to the laws and the algorithms that it feels it should follow? And will it do upgrades on its own,
And we're already there. We're already there.
I think we're there in different instances. So, like, for instance, online, I always say, I'm super excited. I know there's the metaverse, but I'm super excited to find out what's going to replace the internet. What's going to be that next big thing, because it's watered down. What's going to be that next phase? Will it be some form of virtual reality where we're learning and engaging in that manner, or will it be, I have no idea what it will be, but right now, I think it's hard to do it. I think we're there, but we're not like there. We haven't married it where the robots are dependent on just yet. We may depend on our phones for certain things, but our phones aren't mobile. They're not mobile entities or agents that are helping us and also thinking at the same time. We can cut this thing off and we're done. The moment we get robots that have that AI and that intelligence, and we're leaning on them for certain things where we may lean on them like we lean on a person because they are, quote unquote, an assistant filling some of the lower labor needs, then we're in trouble. But we're not there just yet because they're still rolling around on wheels.
Wow. That's I always get a little, maybe I'm old school, but when I go into a store, grocery store or hardware store, and they got the self-service checkout, I tend to always, even if it takes longer, go to the one where the people are checking us out. And why? Because I realize for every one of the self-service checkout, that means that somebody's losing a job. And as we, continue to see these things unfold, that's just a minor example. But can you imagine what they're talking about with not only just Tesla cars having autopilots, but they're talking about big transfer trucks, tractor trailers that deliver goods up and down highways as being replacing humans with computers that will automatically think and adjust to situations. And of course, that means there's going to be some problems as those things go, up and down the road. I mean, you know how challenging it is. I mean, anyone that's been on the interstate systems in any major cities will understand how, traffic gets clogged up and how oftentimes I've had to make a split-second decision to avoid an accident. And those that didn't, unfortunately, they may have caused injuries or even or death. And so that's one of the fears of at what point do the computers completely take over our life story. And You mentioned something a moment ago about how we learn, and you mentioned about the metaverse and being like what's next in terms of the internet. And the reality is that the internet got started way back in the late 50s, and yet, of course, it didn't become available to the public, to the general public, until the 90s. And but now look at how far we've progressed in that time period. But as you say, that they've already gone to, Internet 2, probably Internet 3 or 4 that's out there. And what is that going to look like? And I even just yesterday, I think it was, they stopped Apple just came out with a new virtual reality goggles, and this gentleman, this guy was riding down the road, driving his Tesla on autopilot while he had these goggles on, and you could tell the law enforcement came up beside him because you could tell he wasn't focused on the road. He was playing with the whatever was on his screen on the and I said, boy, that was a problem getting ready to happen. And as we look down the road, wow, even the way in which you'll be teaching, let's say your kids are relatively young, but to think about how the educational system is changing, particularly in the lower levels. What happens will they have a traditional classroom approach, or will kids be learning, quote unquote, everything on their own with a pre-described curriculum that, only requires them to take a test, which eliminates their social skills development. So it's an amazing time that we're in. But I'm glad to know that we have people like yourself who are on the cutting edge and who are helping to address these things and helping to blend, like you said, the technology with the community engagement and helping us, excuse me, to address so many of the health disparities. But all of these are things that, issues that you're raising. And I'm just, like I said, I'm glad that you're there as one of the gatekeepers helping us to better understand what's going on out there.
Oh, yeah, thank you. No problem. It's all very, very fascinating and interesting. And I usually tell my students, don't always be on the receiving end. Be part of the development. It is a human brain that is creating the technology. It is. At the end of the day, the people programming, it's a person. Like, as African Americans, we can't always let it happen to us or be on the consumer part of it. We have to be on that developing end of it. Or else we can't expect people who think at such a level of looking at, algorithms and the codes and all of that, because they are learning a complicated language, a computer language. And when you were talking, it made me think like, not only will the kids, when will they stop learning some of the things that we know they can learn historically, in AI, and they teach the children how to program. We lose history because they can type it, and in a matter of seconds they could learn that information, and it's no longer important to know that. But what's important is that they're able to manipulate robots. What happens when that entire curriculum shifts and changes, and I think it's coming. It's definitely going to happen. But African Americans, Hispanics, we need to be there.
Yes,
we have to be on that developing end. So, parents, grandparents, push your children in a direction. If they are playing video games, support them in their video games, because that's one of the first movement is a child's ability to figure out an adventure, figure out how to get where they're going. Like, a lot of the video gaming is problem solving, and their minds move so quickly through multiple things happening. They're able to build, they're able to code, and so don't yell at them for playing it. Encourage them. You have some gamers who are in college making $300,000, and
wow,
and they probably won't make that money with the degree that they're getting in college, but they're getting that, they're making that money because they know how to game, if they're interested in drones, if they're racing drones, like any of these things that are involving technology, and you have a child or a grandchild that's into it, feed that, because they're seeing and they're looking at the world differently, and they are going to be the ones that's going to be responsible for this programming. You can get them in those programs where they can code and learn more about robotics and learn more about computers and develop these different games and stuff. The games are getting real too, and that piece that you said about virtual reality is very important. The moment they're able to remove those goggles and make it at an affordable rate, and we can walk around and still do our everyday tasks while doing virtual reality, yeah, that's it right there. that's the part, and we're already there, but it's not as affordable for everyone.
Well, you also raised an interesting question. I know our time is rapidly coming to an end. It's been such a great discussion. But one of the thoughts that came to mind with your last comment is the fact that as they develop all of these high-level computational skills, we've also got to find that balance to help them to better understand their history, their social skills development, how to interact with people, and not just be interacting with the screens that are in front of them. How do we get them out there to make sure that they stay physically fit? How do we get them out there to make sure that they understand the genealogy of their family tree and what got them to this stage in this life, and what about the sacrifice that was made? So, it's I used to hear the phrase, it's a brave new world that's out there, but, as I thought further about some of these, looking back at some of these TV shows that I used to watch a lot of, and thinking about Star Trek and Commander Data, it's interesting that they named that robot Commander Data. That means he had think about it, he had a command of data. He could instantly give them answers about just about anything, multiple languages, or any type of calculation. And I don't think we ever want to get to the point where we allowing the robots control us. We still got to be the ones that are controlling the robot, and that's going to be so important as we train our kids.
Well, that is such a good point, because and that brings me back to another classic movie, Planet of the Apes.
Oh yes.
And it was one of the remakes, and I remember watching it, and it was a scene where they didn't have any electricity, and a guy found an electric photo, kind of like a frame, and it had pictures of his family, and it was like, in my mind, I'm like, you have photo books, but with all this electricity, with all of these computers, if we lose electricity, if something was to ever happen, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about AI warfare, which is a thing, because you were talking about the trucks, automatic, autonomous agents looking at different trucks and transporters. Well, what happened when we have fighter jets that are ran by AI? So now we don't have to, put people in there. It's crazy. But if something ever does happen where we were to lose all of this energy and we have to engage and interact, and will we be able to do that? So we do need to figure out a way to ensure that human, that social piece is still there, and, knowing the importance of the legacy that you carry within your family is vital, that those conversations are still had in the home. But then, I don't even know if they're going to be taught in school, but within the community, we can't let those things go.
So true. So true. Well, let me just thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that our audience truly, as we said, they learned some new things tonight that I know that they didn't know before. And so we're grateful that we could come together and have this conversation. And, maybe we'll look at coming back together in the near future and continuing this conversation, because certainly you have touched upon something that not just the future, but you touched on the now, and that's so important. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up for tonight. Again, folks, thank you to Dr. Danielle Wilson-Howard, a professor at Bethune-Cookman University, and also an affiliate faculty member with the University of Florida's STEM. That's Science, Technology, Engineering, and Communications Center there, and certainly a very strong worker here in the local community. And we're just so grateful that she could take time to share all the interesting insights that she's given us tonight. And so as we bring our show to a smooth landing, we always want to remind you that education is the key to being and staying free. And as we always start off and as we conclude, we always tell you, never go to bed as ignorant as you were when you got up this morning. Every day, you ought to learn something new. I trust that you have tonight. God bless you all, and good night.
Good night.